has it been raining? Holy! Washing a lot of the snow away, and I don't think you even see it anymore. There's that great big boulder in the river behind me, and it was down, remember the water was down, it's probably down below the top of that rock by a good 8 inches. But now it's like 2 feet of water above it, so I'm real limited to fishing right now. But I'm not limited to sharing people's voices. I'm gonna get right into it right now, alright? I'm gonna get right into sharing. Enough babbling. More sharing. More focus on all of the people. Now listen to this one. This is titled, Iowa Experience Changes My Mind. Hello, Mr. Steve. My name is Jim. I first listened to your channel a couple years ago. You were telling a story about a grizzly bear experience you had while guiding. As an avid outdoorsman and archery hunter myself, I was intrigued by it. So, I would occasionally start listening to your shared experiences. I later heard about your first Sabe interaction and thought to myself, okay. And since I had never got the feeling you were telling tall tales, and since I had never gotten the feeling you were telling tall tales before, I took it with a grain of salt and listened. Even though I never paid much attention to the subject in the past, I had always assumed that these stories were for entertainment. But as I listened to you, a memory of a hunting show I was watching years ago came back to me. It was an episode of Easton Bow Hunting TV with Fred Eckler. He had set up a trail camera while bear hunting in Colorado, I believe. Not 100% on what he was hunting or where, but that's what I thought I remembered. Anyway, he had mentioned that he felt like he'd been being watched the entire time. Upon reviewing the trail cam footage, they witnessed what appeared to be the lower legs of a muscular bipedal something. Stopped, then passing on the edge of the frame, and he showed the clip. At first I thought, what the F? There's some dumbass out there trying to pull a prank on them. Although it would have been a pretty ballsy dumbass to be walking around in a furry costume during bear season, Fred just made the statement, I'm not going to say what it is, I'm just saying it was creepy. Or something along those lines. So after listening to your experience, I thought, okay, maybe, but this is only a mountain habitat thing, if at all. And I just left it at that. Fast forward to January 2020, southwest Iowa in the Loess Hills. Oh, pronounced Loess Hills. Thank you. Overlooking the Missouri River. I'm reviewing my trail cam clips and have one clip time-stamped at 2 a.m. in which a light is moving smoothly along the edge of a tree line. The camera is positioned about 5 yards inside the tree line, facing down a trail that heads out into the field. The light, which at the time I assumed was a trespasser's headlamp, was moving smoothly out along the field edge, not bouncing or moving up and down. Once the light was close to the right side of the video screen, it stopped for about a second and then disappeared. The thing I thought was weird was that I couldn't see any body shape or legs of a would-be trespasser. It was only a light moving slowly, smoothly, from the left to the right, then off. I watched it about 10 times trying to pick up any identifying features, then deleted it. Oh! Thinking I couldn't tell who it was no point in keeping the clip. Jump ahead to August 2020 at about 3 p.m. I just left the same property and I was in a hurry as I was running late. I was about a mile down the road when I crested a small hill and saw something big dart from the fence on the right side of the road. What I thought was waist-high grass about 10 yards into the thick trees and brush. I thought, what the heck? I slammed on the brakes thinking a neighbor's Angus bull was loose and had gotten spooked by my sudden crest of the rise. The whole time thinking, I didn't know a bull could move that quick. Mind you, I grew up around cattle and have first-hand knowledge of how fast they can move when they want to. Anyway, this thing darted so quickly into the trees that I might have thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. If it hadn't been for the branches and small trees still swaying a bit as I came to a stop right next to where it had gone in. I stopped on the road right there, windows down and listening for crashing through the trees so I could get a direction on where it was heading, in case I had to let the neighbor know. I couldn't hear anything crashing. So I quickly put the truck in park, shut it off, and jumped out to listen closely. Steve, the only thing I could hear was my feet hit the dirt on the road. I instantly got an uneasy feeling as I leaned on the hood of my truck and listened. Not dread or fear, just uneasy. I thought, well, I'm running late, I'd better get going anyway, and jumped back in and headed out. The next time I was out there, a couple days later, I stopped to take a closer look at where the bull had disappeared into the brush. I got out and climbed over the fence. The grass was much taller than I thought it was, up to my lower chest. I thought to myself, dang, that bull is bigger than most. I didn't bother going any further because in my mind at the time, it was the neighbor's bull, and this shit is thick, thorny, and full of ticks. About a week later, I stopped to talk to the neighbor and his wife because they were working in the field by my gate. While visiting with them, I asked them if they had any cattle get loose because I thought I had seen their bull across the road from their property. They said, no, it wasn't theirs. Then the wife asked, are you sure it wasn't Sasquatch? I chuckled a little bit thinking she was joking around. She continued to say that that's right next to where another old neighbor had driven into the ditch, claiming while swerving to miss hitting one crossing the road in front of him. I saw a look on her face not change much, just kind of raising an eyebrow and a half a smirk. Trying not to insult her, I said, well, it was big, dark, and fast. I looked at her husband, and he was just nodding, looking at the ground, and kind of kicking the mud off his heel like all the farmers do when they don't want to comment on something. Knowing I'm an avid hunter and I have cameras all over in those hills and woods, she asked if I had heard or gotten any pictures of any mountain lions yet. I said, no, not yet, but I know people who have claimed to see them, and a buddy who has a trail cam pics of two, about 2 hours north. She continued to tell me they were outside one night and could hear what sounded just like a woman screaming bloody murder, and they couldn't figure out what the heck it was. I said I've seen and heard bobcats screaming, but it was nothing like what they were describing. She went on to tell me that the old neighbor that drove in the ditch and had shared his experience had faced ridicule from others since moved. Also, had filmed some Bigfoot show. Also, someone had filmed some Bigfoot show down there looking for evidence. I smiled and listened respectfully through the whole interaction as I like and respect my neighbors. I also let them know that if I see anything, mountain lion or otherwise, that I'd let them know. Jump ahead to late October 2020, pre-dawn one morning. While walking down into the bottom as quiet as possible with no light on, using only the moonlight on the way to my tree stand, I was about a quarter mile from where I parked my truck and about a quarter mile from my stand. And all of a sudden, two loud bangs erupted on the ridge across from me, to my left and left of the direction I was heading. It was loud and it caught me off guard, causing me to jump. It sounded like it was about 200 yards away. I thought, what the F? Who's up there shooting at 22 before sunrise? A little pissed off that someone may have ruined my hunt before it got started, I stood still and listened. After not hearing anything for about 30 seconds, I convinced myself that maybe it'll help deer drive to my stand. It was up and over the ridge straight ahead of me. So I quietly continued down my trail. I made it maybe 10 steps when another bang sounded off. This time it sounded like the crack of a large, dry piece of hardwood. I thought, someone can see me and is effing with me. Though I don't know, because even if they had night vision, the trees were so thick on that ridge that it could be nearly impossible during full daylight to see me from there. This time I stopped, squatted down, and listened intently. After about 2 minutes of not hearing so much as a twig snap, I said to myself, F it, I'm hunting anyway. Steve, the instant I stood up to continue my walk, another crack rang out. At this point, I'm effing pissed. I throw the middle finger salute in their direction, say quietly to myself, you better not cross onto my side of that fence, and continued my walk with the hopes that the commotion would just drive the deer further my way. I made it to my stand, quietly climbed up, and settled in. Needless to say, I didn't hear or see a single sign of life all morning, not so much as a squirrel, which is very odd for this stand. Normally, I'm constantly bombarded with the sounds of squirrels scurrying everywhere in this location. The only thing I noticed was the feeling of being observed all morning. After 4 hours, I headed back out with no other odd noises or experiences. I'm not saying any of my odd experiences related to the Sabe people, but my odd experiences that I've tried to explain to myself and can't quite get those pieces to fit sure do seem to fit nicely into the puzzle of others' claims to Sabe. And since I don't know and have any proof of the contrary, I'm open to listening to all information. P.S. Not to change the topic, but it needs to be said about all information and listening to others' experiences. Steve, sorry for this, but we, the public here in the U.S., were told by our leading doctor that we don't need to wear masks. Then it was shut down for 15 days to slow the spread. Then it was now, wear masks. Then it was definitely natural virus based on science. Then it was wear 2 masks or more. Then it was to get the vaccine so you're safe, and if you do, then you don't need to wear the mask. Then it is possible the virus escaped from the lab where scientists had not been studying gain of function. Then it was, well, there may have been studying gain of function, but we definitely didn't know about it. And it didn't find anything of the source. Then it was, well, we funded the lab, but for other reasons. Then it was, the virus most likely escaped accidentally from the lab, and we are being as transparent as possible, and there is no cover-up going on. Now it's put on your mask, back on, even if you're vaccinated. Get another vaccine, and keep everything shut down to prevent the spread of the deadliest virus in history that has a survival rate of 99.8%. And it's all for your own good. Never mind the amount of control, power, and money the same doctor and others have acquired this past year. PPS. I've had CVID, as well as several other people I know. I took the advice of a medical doctor whose video was soon removed from the internet. I took zinc, vitamin D, and washed it down with quinine water, aka tonic water. I felt tired and had a headache for 2 days. Other than that, a couple funny smells here and there. That's the full extent of my symptoms. No one else I know who has CVID has been hospitalized. Thank God. That being said, I know many more people who have been vaccinated. Some have had little or side effects similar to my CVID experience. But I know 2 people who had very scary side effects to the vaccine. One friend who was bedridden for 2 weeks after the vaccine, and another lost sensation in her fingers and toes for a while and still has some numbness in her toes. I'm sharing with you only what I've seen firsthand. People listening should do what they feel is right for them. Look into it themselves. Don't just trust people who have lied repeatedly in the past based on their word. I better stop there because I'm pretty sick of the bald-faced lies being spread, and I'm getting myself fired up. An enormous thank you and thank God for men and women like you, Steve, who are brave enough to look people in the eyes and tell them that you will speak your truths and there's nothing they can do to stop you. There are many of us out here, and we will stand beside you and fight for what's right when or if the need arises. You may not want to read this part out loud, but on a personal note, I've been laying in a hospital bed fighting for my life with barely enough strength to lift my fingers to type an email. The email sure as shit wouldn't be to some guy on YouTube blaming me for getting sick. I would spend my last bits of strength telling the people in my life how much I love them. Just saying that's what I would be doing. Get well soon, Drew. Okay, Drew, thanks for that. This is a little while ago. It almost sounds familiar like I read this, and if I did, I apologize. If I didn't, well, here you go. Sometimes I do read emails the odd time before I put them in the notes, because as you guys know, I go through my inbox, I make sure it's an experience, and I copy and paste it, right? But thanks for that email, man. And yeah, welcome to the club of no return, sort of. It's amazing how many people have become aware of this topic, laughed, scoffed at it, thought it was bullshit, and then had their own experience. Boom. Inducted into the club of no return, just like that. And as far as the last part of your email, no apologies needed, man. You have a voice, and it deserves to be heard just as much as any other voice on the face of the planet today. You get to speak about what you want to speak about, and if anybody wants to listen, they can listen. If they don't want to listen, well, they can just shut it off. But nobody's going to stop us from speaking, right? As long as we keep speaking, right? Okay, I'm going to get one more out here, and I got to whip back to the house and meet my electrician so I can get that shop, the man cave, going again. Jam-packed day today. I'm working on the barn. Okay, let's this one. Hi, Steve. Feel free to share my first name. My name is Kylie. I never believed in Sabbath and thought it was a fun/terrifying conspiracy theory. My younger sister's fiance introduced our family to Sasquatch stories on your channel. My older sister showed me a couple of other videos before I really believed. One of a group in the cabin in the 70s where a group of Sabbath making lots of noise and yelling. It reminded me of my following experience. I've told people this experience as the time I learned my fight or flight response. I was 12 or 13 years old, living in West Michigan at the southern end of the Manistee National Forest. My younger sister and mom had gotten into a routine of walking at night. Following my older sisterly duty, I went out to scare the daylights out of them. Our street had a dirt road that looped behind our house that met the main road at both ends. I ran through the woods to get to the dirt road to cut them off. It was a moonless night and super dark. I could barely see. I was almost to the main road when I heard a noise not more than 15 feet off to my left. I stopped in my tracks. The creature screamed the most terrifying noise I've ever heard before or since. The best way I can describe it was a multi-toned scream. My heart seemed to stop, and without thinking, I took a huge step forward and screamed back at it. It ran off across the road in front of me and crashed up the hill to my right. That hill took my sisters and I as children about 10 minutes to climb. This creature was up the hill in under 5 seconds. People have always told me it was a deer or a big cat, but from the crashing noises I knew that it was not a four-legged creature. It was a running noise, not a galloping noise. Plus, that scream was not of any creature I've heard in the woods before. I ran all the way home. I never saw anything that night with the darkness. I just heard the noises. After my mom and sister got home later that night, I asked them if they heard anything and where they walked. My mom said they were on the main road the whole time and didn't hear anything. The video my sister showed me was the same scream/yelling that I heard in the woods a decade before, and a sabe is really the only creature that really fits the whole picture of my story. I guess I'll need to watch my flight instincts in the future, because I never want to fight one of these things. Ignorance is truly bliss, as I will be way more cautious of car camping on my solo long road trips. I've driven from South California through Canada to Alaska, car camping the whole way, thankfully without a sabe incident. Thanks for being central place for these stories. My sister and I appreciate your delivery and letting the stories tell themselves. God bless Kylie. Kylie, thanks for sending that email in. Welcome to the Club of No Return. Right? Welcome to the Club of No Return. It's a big club. So many. So many emails. I could sit here and read for months. Isn't it incredible? All right, I gotta get going. Too much on my mind to sit here right now. I can't concentrate on reading. I gotta go. I gotta get my stuff caught up with, and I gotta get my ass in some adventures. Holy cabin fever. I'll be back shortly with more voices being heard.